Welcome. Today we're going to try to simplify a couple of square roots. For the numeric one, I want to show it done two ways. One that's kind of a little bit more conceptual, show you what's happening underneath, and then one all laid out, just an easy way to remember how to do it. So let's say I want to take the square root of 272. I just need to identify a perfect square that goes into that number, say 16. 272 is 16 times 17. So the square root of 16 is 4, and 17 is prime, so it doesn't reduce. So the square root of 272 is the same as 4 times the square root of 17. Say you're not as experienced with perfect squares, you have trouble identifying them in larger numbers, we can break it down using a factor tree. Just find two numbers that multiply together to make the number you're looking for. So if we have 272, it's an even number, so 2 definitely goes into it. So if I factor out a 2, that's 2 times 136. And then I'm going to keep going until all we have are prime numbers that I can't break down any further. 136 is 2 times 68. 68 is 2 times 34. 34 is 2 times 17. Once we have our tree, we're going to look for our pairs. I've got a pair of 2's, another pair of 2's, and this 17 is all by itself. So the pairs are what break out. The pairs are how our square roots will simplify. Each of those two 2's will multiply together to make that 4, and that 17 that's left over is still stuck inside the square root. So now let's throw a couple of variables into the mix. Let's take the square root of 126 x to the 5th times y cubed. So there's some extra stuff going on, but let's start with that 126 and just break it down like we did before. Find two numbers that multiply together to make 126. Well, it's 9 and 14. And then we're just going to keep going down. So 9 is 3 times 3. 14 is 7 times 2. So the square root of 126 is 3 times the square root of 14. Now I did ignore the x to the 5th and the y cubed, so let's take care of those. X to the 5th, I'm going to do the same thing. I want to look for how many pairs of x's there are. So if I have 5, that means I have 2 pairs and 1 left over. So those 2 pairs of x's go to the same place that pair of 3's went. So it's going to be 3x squared in front of the square root, with our 1x left over, so 3x squared times the square root of 14x. And then I'm just going to repeat that for the y's. If I have y cubed, that means I have a pair of y's with 1 left over, so it brings our total answer to 3x squared y times the square root of 14xy. Alright, last one. Now not only do I have something inside the square root, but we're already starting with something outside. We've got 3x squared times the square root of 92x cubed. So I'm just going to ignore that 3x squared for the moment. Let's just simplify that square root of 92x cubed the way we already had. Square root of 92, well, that's 4 times 23. 4 is 2 times 2. And then with our 3x's, that gives us 2x times the square root of 23x. And then there's that 3x squared that I ignored. Well, let's just put that back out front where it came from. So it's 3x squared times 2x times the square root of 23x. And then all we got to do is multiply our coefficients, which gives us 6x cubed times the square root of 23x. And there we go. That's how we simplify a square root, whether it has variables in it or not, whether there are coefficients in front of the square root or not. Have a good day. Stay healthy.